and we are back to talk about the nitrogen cycle. So, I have, first of all, plants need nitrogen in order to grow, to do different things. We need it because it's in our DNA, and so we have different pieces. The biggest thing is we have a lot of this nitrogen up in the atmosphere. It's 70% nitrogen. It comes down, of course, that nitrogen ourselves and plants can't use, and it actually forms a symbiotic relationship with nitrogen fixing bacteria. And so once that fixes it, the plants are able to absorb that nitrogen. Oh, let me turn off the sound here. Alright. And that's what I was talking about. This is actually what it looks like. It's on the root nodules of legume plants, and that's where the bacteria is going to live. We also have plankton that have the nitrogen fixing bacteria in them. When anything dies, it's all going to be back in the soil. We have decomposing bacteria. Amino acids are also made of nitrogen, and it's going to go in and make these soil nitrates, which can also be fixed by this nitrogen. We have denitrifying bacteria, which will bring it back up to the atmospheric. So the reservoir, where most of it is in the atmosphere. It's going to be in the food chain through fixation of bacteria, recycles in decomposing and nitrifying bacteria, and the denitrifying bacteria also bring it back to the soil, or sorry, back up to the air. Now we have phosphorus, which is also very important for plants and is one of the main things that we need in order to survive as well. And so it is found in rocks and minerals, and then from there it can go into water or into the soil. The decomposers will add that from when we die and everything, they'll add that to the soil. And also same as in the water. And so the reservoir here is actually the rocks and mineral and soil. That's where you're going to find the phosphorus. It's entered through erosion, so as those rocks break down or soil breaks down, and uptake by plants. It's recycled through bacteria and fungus, and the abiotic is the loss to ocean sediment. So we're going to have a lot down here, and that's kind of where it is. Water cycle. And so we have all these main places of water in the ocean, lake, water vapor. We can get it to rain. Transpiration is as water from plant goes up into the air. Evaporation is lakes and oceans, thing evaporating up into the atmosphere. Runoff going from the soil to different places. So the reservoir, the surface, and atmospheric water, so that water vapor, lakes and oceans, entering the food chain from precipitation and plants using it. So we recycle through transpiration, so bringing it back up and return to the atmosphere. Different places, there's runoff and evaporation. So a little bit more on transpiration. So there's an uptake of water in plants, and it will lose water through its leaves to the atmosphere. And so you can see going up, it's called the xylem phloem. These are little water particles, and it actually gets lost throughout the stomata, which is also what brings the carbon dioxide, the gas exchange, carbon dioxide in, oxygen out, in order for it to forego photosynthesis. So water is going up and out the tree. Ways that we have broken the water cycle. So when we tear down the forest, we're breaking the water cycle. So as we tear down the forest, we're going to increase the erosion. Groundwater is not transpired, precipitation's not created. And we turn a forest into a desert, which is called desertification. Again, this is happening by deforestation, and so changes in forest area due to grazing, logging. It reduces biodiversity, degrades carbon storage because that's where the plants are going to be bringing in that carbon dioxide. The water balance is going to be thrown off, which can, in turn, affect climate patterns. Repairing that, there's something called the Greenbelt movement, which is where we're planting trees in places like Kenya. We're trying to restore that sustainable, so something that we can actually do, ecosystem. So here's all kinds of pictures of people trying to do this and establish a democracy, especially empowering the women. So we're trying all these things not only for the environment but for the country. And Nobel Peace Prize. This is a classic example of studying this forest. And so you can see here in New Hampshire, we had 38 acres of deforestation, and we looked at the precipitation and transpiration, collecting different waters, dams, and what happened is the nitrate runoff increased tremendously. 40% increase in runoff, so we're losing that water. 60 times the loss in nitrogen, 10 times in calcium, because all of that's running off with the water and we're losing it all. So it's completely out of the ecosystem and gone. Why do we care about nitrogen? Again, it's one of the major things that plants need. One thing is when we get that sewage runoff, too much nitrogen can actually cause eutrophication. So this is the green stuff in lakes. And so what happens, the reason this is a problem, is algae takes in all that nitrogen. Too much algae, you get the green, doesn't look pretty, but the real problem is that algae is taking up all that oxygen in different pieces, and so the fish species end up dying. This is showing a picture, so nitric and sulfuric acid that is coming up from factories, showing things that have been damaged by this acid rain and snow. And so some higher pH, but especially these 4.3, so getting this acid rain around here. So that's in Colorado, a little bit worse than the rest of the western states, still not as bad as the eastern. Another thing with toxins is biological magnification. So a toxin is sprayed maybe over the grass, bug spray, pesticides. It's in here, it's alright. So it's at 0.025 parts, this ppm means parts per million. But as the zooplankton eat that, it's increasing because that doesn't break down in the organisms. The smelt, little fish eat those, and also remember you need more of those to feed, so you're increasing. By the time it gets to this herring, it has 124 parts per million. So even though it was sprayed down here, maybe in the water with runoff, it went from 0.025 to 124. Another issue, we're just kind of going through all the different pieces of conservation, is the rising carbon dioxide. This is just a graphic showing that there's been increased burning of fossil fuels and CO2 is increasing. So this is the CO2. There's a correlation with the temperature increasing as well. Another issue not really related to warming is the ozone hole. We actually found this from spraying aerosols, different things. And so in 1985 increased the size, so you can actually see a little bit here to this big part here. Even though we've stopped a lot of this, it takes time for this to actually happen. Another issue is overexploitation of fishing And so we've actually seen this really bad in the Chesapeake Bay that we're out. The problem is we don't know when we're out of fish until we're out, because it's really hard to count them, even though we have several ways of trying to. Also, we get genetic diversity loss. We've talked about the biodiversity and everything. And so a couple examples, North Atlantic region, the cod was overfished, and by 1992 there's less than 1% of the original population. And so bluefish tuna also have a 90% decline, as well as swordfish. And I can show you there's things of fish you should eat versus not, because a lot of this stuff is overfished. Unfortunately, it's the stuff that people really like to eat most of the time. So we have all these pieces. If we keep eating the fish, it's going to disrupt the food web. There won't be enough food for us. Also, job loss. The threatened species of cod is close to disappearance, which is competition. We are aquaculture, so we're raising a lot of them. Oops, sorry. Aquaculture is the darker. We're still capturing most of them. And this is also how we fish a lot of times are with these great big nets, so we don't even really care what's happening. We harvest everything. The bycatch is just thrown out and usually dead, and so we discard that. So basically in every way possible it's messing up the ecosystems. So with taking those out, you get the predator-prey interactions that are messed up, the competitive, and changes in the food web. Like I said, that was just kind of an overview of different things that humans are doing. So we'll be talking about some of those in class. And if you have any questions, thank you very much.